Hey, I'm Dustin and welcome to Fantasy Smack Talk. Week 3's in the books. Let's take a look at the waiver wire. Before I get into it, this is just a portion of the waiver wire. To see the full list, get onto our site. Check it out. It'll be up later this week. And as always, get into those forums. All right, let's start with the must-adds. And Peyton Hillis, this guy's going to be the most added player this week. You know, everyone, including ourselves, thought Jerome Harrison was going to be the guy out there, but Hillis has proved us wrong. Week 3, going crazy against the Ravens. Good run D. Hillis looks like he could be the real deal. Next, we got a quarterback for you, and Kyle Orton. You know, we weren't ready to write this guy off coming into the season. A lot of people were. You know, we told you to pick him up before the year. Now he's second in the league in passing. We like Kyle Orton in pretty much all leagues at this point. Still only owned in 70% of leagues. Moving on, we got a tight end for you, Dustin Keller, another guy we were high on. We talked about him last week. Another solid game. Time for this guy to get owned in pretty much all leagues. Only owned in about 65% right now. And the last guy we're going to talk about is must-add in pretty much all leagues. You know, this is kind of a long shot, but we like him. LeGarrette Blount out there at Tampa Bay. You know, we have no confidence in Cadillac Williams at this point. He has not looked that great, only averaging about 2.5 yards a carry. Blount looked great in his 6 carries against Pittsburgh. 27 yards and a touchdown in those 6 carries. And yes, this is the same Blount that punched that Boise State player and then had to get restrained while getting escorted out of the stadium when he tried to fight some fans as well. But at the very least, he should give you someone to watch. Should be an exciting player. But we think this guy is going to take over the carries out there in Tampa Bay, and he is worth an add and worth using a decent waiver number on, in our opinion. All right, let's talk about some guys to add in deeper leagues. A lot of running backs could have some short-term value because there's some injuries in the league. We got Kenneth Darby if Steven Jackson ends up missing anytime. We got Maurice Morris if Javid Best misses anytime. Ryan Terrain had a decent game on Sunday. Matthews might be out for another week. Lawrence Maroney, looks like Moreno's going to be out for another week. You also got Buckholter out there, but looks like Maroney's going to be the guy to own. So a lot of running back options next week if some of these starters end up missing some time. We do have one other running back for you, and that's Marshawn Lynch. You know, it is an absolute mess out there in Buffalo, but 2 straight weeks Lynch has gotten the majority of the carries. If you're going to own any of them at this point, we think Marshawn has the biggest upside as of right now, but who knows what's going to happen. That team's terrible. But Lynch, as of now, probably the guy to own. All right, let's get into some receivers. We'll start with Mario Manningham. Another solid week. Still only owned in 60% of leagues. Time for this guy to get owned. Jacoby Jones. If Andre Johnson ends up missing any time, this is going to help Jacoby Jones a lot. Houston is going to still throw the ball. Jones could benefit greatly from that. The Denver receivers, Jabbar Gaffney, Brandon Lloyd, Demaryius Thomas. Kyle Orton's been finding these guys. You know, if I had to pick one out of the 3, I'd still go with the rookie, but all 3 of these receivers could have value from here on out. Another receiver we like, Louis Murphy. We talked about him last week as a guy to keep an eye on. Now he's a guy to pick up. You know, they're going up against a Houston team next week. He could have another big game. We like Louis Murphy. And I wanted to take a minute and talk about Roy Williams. Monster game, but we're not totally believing it. I don't know what to do with this one. If it's a deeper league, go ahead and take a gamble on him, but I don't expect too many of these repeat performances, but he is on a good offense. He could get involved. One other receiver I want to talk about, Dexter McCluster. Time to pick this guy up in leagues that count return yards. Kansas City gets the ball in his hands in so many different ways. If your league counts return yards, we think he's going to be able to be probably good for at least one big play a week. We like McCluster in leagues that count return yards. Now let's talk about some guys to at least just keep an eye on and maybe add in the deepest of leagues. First guy, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. A lot of people are probably going to pick him up after they saw what he did on Sunday, but don't forget, Fred Taylor got hurt, and if you've ever owned a New England running back in the last few years, it's a mess. They spread the carries around so much. Do not believe Ben Jarvis's numbers, but he is a guy to keep an eye on. A guy that might be worth picking up next week is Bruce Gradkowski going up against Houston. You know, in deeper leagues, we think Gradkowski could be a good pickup and play next week. And last guy I'm going to talk about is Lance Moore. Monster game, but we're not believing these numbers either. You know, it's just a mess out there with the Saints receivers. They spread the ball around so much. You know, if it's not Moore, it's Meacham. If it's not Meacham, it's Henderson. If it's not Henderson, it's Colston. It's just way too many receivers out there. Lance Moore will have more good games, but they'll be few and far between. Now that's it for this week's Waiver Wire show. Don't forget, check out the full posts on our site and get into our forums. And Brent and I will be here later this week.